Saul Goodman got 86 years in prison. 86. And honestly, he probably earned every single one of them. Because without this guy, Walter White would have been dead or in handcuffs within a month of cooking his first batch. That's not me being dramatic. That's literally what Saul himself said in court. And after rewatching this show more times than I'd like to admit, I think he's absolutely right. See, most people talk about Breaking Bad like it's the Walter White show. Genius chemist builds an empire. But the more I watch it, the more I realize Walt couldn't do anything on his own except cook. The second he had to deal with the actual business side, the money, the law, the logistics, he was completely lost. And every single time he was about to go down, there was one guy picking up the phone, one guy with a plan. So here's what I want to do. I want to go through every single time Saul Goodman bailed Walt out. Not just the obvious ones, all of them. And by the end of this, I think you'll see Breaking Bad completely differently. Let's get into it. So the first real save, and this one set the tone for everything, is when Saul gets Walt connected to Gus Fring. People forget how bad things were before Gus. Walt and Jesse had just lost combo. He got shot on some random corner because Walt, in his infinite wisdom, decided to expand territory without knowing anything about how street-level drug dealing actually works. Their dealer network was 3 guys: Badger, Skinny Pete, and Combo. And now one of them was dead, and the other 2 were terrified. Walt had pounds of meth and literally no way to sell it. And Saul just looks at them and says the most honest thing anyone's ever told Walt. You 2 suck at peddling meth, period. And he was right. So what does Saul do? He uses his connections to set up a meeting with the most powerful drug distributor in the Southwest. He knows a guy who knows a guy who knows another guy. That first guy is Mike Ehrmantraut, who works for Gus. Without Saul's relationship with Mike, built over years of doing business together, Gus Fring would never have sat down with some random chemistry teacher. Gus was the most cautious person alive. He spent 20 years building his cover. He's not taking a meeting with amateurs off the street, and even then, Jesse almost blows it by showing up late and high. Gus says no, but Saul keeps pushing behind the scenes. Eventually, Walt figures out that the chicken restaurant guy is the drug lord, and he gets his second chance. That partnership turned Walt from making a few $1,000s in the desert to a $3 million contract in a super lab. None of that happens without Saul making the introduction. But here's one that doesn't get talked about enough: the fake Heisenberg. This is honestly one of the most creative things I've ever seen on television. Badger gets arrested in a sting operation. The DEA, specifically Hank, starts squeezing him hard. Give us Heisenberg, and you walk free. Badger's looking at serious time. He's gonna crack. It's just a matter of when. And what does Walt do? He walks into Saul's office pretending to be Badger's uncle and offers a $10,000 bribe. Just straight up, here's cash, make him shut up, which is so incredibly stupid. Saul says no, obviously. So then Walt and Jesse kidnap the man. They drive him to the desert in ski masks, put him on his knees next to a freshly dug grave, and point a gun at his head. That's Walt's brilliant strategy. Threaten the one guy who can actually help you. But Saul, even with a gun in his face, sees these 2 aren't cartel killers. He calms down, takes control, and pulls out a play that Walt could never have dreamed up. He brings in Jimmy in and out. This is a real person in their world. A guy named James Kilkelly who spent 44 out of his 58 years in prison. He preferred it in there, and he'd take the fall for other people for money. So Saul sets the whole thing up. Badger agrees to cooperate with the DEA. He sets up a meeting with Heisenberg on a park bench. And who shows up? Jimmy Kilkelly. Bald, middle-aged, fits the description perfectly. The DEA swoops in, arrests him, Badger goes free, and Walt stays invisible. That cost $80,000, $50 to Saul, $30 to Jimmy, but it bought Walt months of freedom and completely threw Hank off the trail. That's not just lawyering. That's building an entire fake reality and selling it to the federal government. And the beauty of it is that even Hank had doubts. He looked at Jimmy Kilkelly and you could tell he wasn't fully buying it. But what's he going to do? The evidence matched. Badger ID'd the guy. The system worked the way it was supposed to work, except it was being played by someone who understood it better than the people running it. That's Saul's entire thing. He doesn't break the system, he bends it until it works for him. Now, if that was clever, what Saul did after Jane died was straight up criminal. And I mean that literally. Jane chokes in her sleep. Walt watches it happen and doesn't help her. Jesse wakes up next to a dead body in an apartment full of needles and drug paraphernalia and a pile of cash. If he calls 911 right then, it's over. The cops come in, they see everything, Jesse gets arrested, And under interrogation, because he was an absolute wreck at that point, he tells them everything about Walt. So Walt calls Saul, and Saul sends Mike. Mike gets there before anyone else and just professionally dismantles the crime scene. He grabs every syringe, every piece of evidence, every dollar of cash. He slaps Jesse awake and drills one sentence into his head. "I woke up, I found her, that's all I know." Then Mike leaves with garbage bags full of evidence, and Jesse calls the ambulance like nothing happened. The cops never suspected a thing. That right there is the moment Saul stopped being just a lawyer. He became a full partner in covering up serious crimes. And without that cleanup, Jesse goes to prison, and Walt goes down right behind him. Think about it, Jesse was in no condition to think clearly. He was sobbing, shaking, completely destroyed. One detective asking the right question and the whole thing would have crumbled. Mike didn't just clean the apartment, he gave Jesse a script and made him rehearse it until it was muscle memory. That level of crisis management doesn't come from a textbook. That comes from years of doing this exact kind of thing for people like Gus Fring. But the scariest, save the one that still makes me uncomfortable, is the phone call about Marie. Season 3, Episode 6. Hank has tracked down the RV, the original mobile lab, and Walt and Jesse are inside it. Hank is literally standing outside calling for backup, getting a warrant. If that door opens, the show is over. Walt goes to prison for 20 years minimum. There's no talking his way out of being caught inside a working meth lab. Walt calls Saul from inside the RV, and Saul does the only thing that could possibly work. He has Francesca, his secretary, call Hank's personal phone from a burner. She pretends to be from the police and tells Hank that Marie, his wife, has been in a horrible car accident, spinal injuries, being airlifted to the hospital. Hank panics. He drops everything and races to the hospital. And in that window, Walt, Jesse, and Old Joe crush the entire RV into a metal cube. Every fingerprint, every chemical trace, every piece of evidence gone. It worked, but it was evil. And you can see it on Saul's face when he does it. He knows he crossed a line. He weaponized a federal agent's love for his wife. And the fallout was massive, because once Hank found out the call was fake, he lost it. Which brings us to the next save. Hank tracks down Jesse and beats him nearly to death. Just destroys his face? And now Jesse's in a hospital bed, furious, telling Walt he's going to sue Hank into oblivion and that if anyone from the DEA ever comes near him again, he'll flip and give up Heisenberg immediately. Saul shows up at the hospital and does something that seems cold, but was actually brilliant. He pulls out his phone and starts photographing Jesse's mangled face from every angle. He's building a civil lawsuit against a federal agent for assault. And this isn't just about getting money. This is about leverage. That threat of a massive lawsuit forces Hank to admit what he did to his supervisors. Hank gets suspended, loses his badge, and his gun. The most dangerous investigator on the Heisenberg case is temporarily pulled off the board, and Jesse's rage gets channeled into a legal case instead of him running to the DEA and confessing everything. Saul turned a catastrophe into a strategic advantage that removed their biggest threat. Now here's one that people always overlook because it's about money, not guns. The Ted Beneke situation. Skylar's old boss and ex-lover committed tax fraud, and Skylar signed the books. If the IRS audits Ted, they audit Skylar. If they audit Skylar, they find the car wash, the unexplained cash, and the entire Heisenberg operation unravels from the financial side. So Skylar needs to pay off Ted's debt to the IRS over $600,000, but she can't just hand him a bag of cash. Saul creates a fake inheritance from a fictional European relative. Great Aunt Birgit. He sends Ted official paperwork saying he inherited this money. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Because Ted goes and buys a Mercedes with the money instead of paying the IRS. So Saul sends Huel and QB to Ted's house to physically force him to write a check to the US Treasury. Ted panics, tries to run, trips over a rug, and slams his head into a kitchen counter. Ends up in a wheelchair. It's horrible. But the check got signed, the IRS case closed, and Skylar and Walt's finances stayed hidden. Then there's the time Saul literally turned the DEA into Walt's personal security team. Gus Fring has just threatened to murder Walt's entire family. He said it to Walt's face in the desert, "I will kill your wife. I will kill your son. I will kill your infant daughter." Walt has no money left because Skylar gave it to Ted. He can't pay for the disappearer. He's trapped. So Saul calls the DEA. He tips them off anonymously that a Mexican cartel hit squad is targeting Agent Hank Schrader. The DEA immediately posts armed guards around Hank's house and, by extension, around the White's house since they're family. Gus's hitmen can't get anywhere near them. Saul took the agency that was trying to catch Walt and turned them into his bodyguards. That bought Walt the time he needed to plan and execute Gus's assassination. And that assassination only happened because of another Saul save. When Jesse gets hauled into the police station for questioning about ricin because he mentioned it at the hospital after Brock got poisoned, he's sitting in an interrogation room, completely falling apart. The detectives are pushing hard. Jesse knows about the ricin, about Gus's lab, about Walt, about Gail's murder. He's seconds away from spilling everything. Saul storms into that interrogation room and shuts it down. He kicks the detectives out, threatens them with legal action, and sits down with Jesse alone. But here's the part that changed the entire show. While he's with Jesse, Saul extracts one piece of information. Gus Fring regularly visits Hector Salamanca at the nursing home, Casa Tranquila. Saul walks out of that police station and hands that intel straight to Walt. That single detail the nursing home visits was the missing piece. Walt teams up with Hector, rigs his wheelchair with a bomb, and blows Gus Fring's face off. The information that made that possible came from Saul's interrogation room visit. He didn't just save Jesse from a confession that day. He provided the intelligence that took down the most powerful drug lord in the Southwest. Oh, and I should mention the ricin cigarette thing. For Walt's whole manipulation of Jesse to work, making him believe Gus poisoned Brock Saul had to get the ricin cigarette out of Jesse's pocket first. He had Hewell do it. Classic pickpocket move during a pat-down at Saul's office. Saul didn't know Walt was going to poison a kid. He was horrified when he found out, but his infrastructure made it possible. After Gus dies, Walt needs a new place to cook. The super lab is destroyed. And once again, Saul's the one with the answer. He'd been representing the owners of Vamonos Pest for 5 years, a pest control company whose employees were secretly burglarizing the houses they were fumigating. Saul brokers a deal where Walt's crew buys the company. And this was perfect. The fumigation tents completely mask the smell of cooking meth. The homeowners are officially gone for days. Neighbors are warned about toxic chemicals. The cops ignore anything under those tents. Walt's mobile lab fits inside road cases designed for concert equipment. Without Saul's 5-year relationship with a crew of criminal exterminators, Walt would have had nowhere to cook, and the whole post-Gus empire would have collapsed before it started. And what kills me about this is that Saul had this in his back pocket the whole time. He wasn't scrambling to find a solution. He already had one. He'd been maintaining this relationship for half a decade, probably not even knowing exactly when it would pay off. That's not improvisation. That's infrastructure. Saul had a Rolodex of criminals sorted by specialty, and he could pull exactly the right one out for any situation. Then there's the money situation, which Saul was managing from the very beginning. He set up the SaveWalterWhite.com scheme, hiring a hacker from Belarus to route Walt's dirty cash through a botnet that generated fake donations from all over the world. Thousands of microtransactions hitting a charity PayPal account. Completely untraceable. He pitched the laser tag arena as a cash-heavy business with no physical inventory to track. He proposed the nail salon to Jesse as a front. And when Skyler picked the car wash instead, Saul's the one who sent QB in as a fake environmental inspector to scare Bogdan into selling at a fraction of the asking price. He even saved Jesse's house. When Jesse's parents kicked him out and put the place up for sale, Saul showed up at the closing and hit them with a legal threat. He told them they'd committed fraud by hiding the fact that a meth lab had been in the basement. Threatened to tie the property up in lawsuits for years. They caved and sold the house to Jesse through a shell company for half the asking price. That kept Jesse stable and his money safe. In the final season, when Jesse's throwing millions of dollars out of his car window and gets picked up by the cops, Hank rushes to the station to try to flip him. And Saul gets there just in time. He bursts into the interrogation room and physically blocks Hank from getting to Jesse. Cites procedural violations, attorney-client privilege, the whole playbook, drags Jesse out of there before Hank can get a single useful word. And when it becomes clear that Jesse is too unstable to keep around, Saul arranges for Ed the Disappearer to give Jesse a completely new identity and send him to Alaska. He pays for it, he coordinates the pickup, he even has Hewell lift Jesse's weed because Ed won't transport anyone who's using. The plan only fails because Jesse figures out the ricin cigarette trick at the last second and goes berserk. But the operation itself was flawless. And finally the last save. Walt is the most wanted man in America. His face is on every news channel. The DEA, the FBI, and state police are all hunting him. His money's been stolen by Jack's crew. He has nothing. And Saul, who's also being hunted at this point, whose own office has been raided, whose life is completely destroyed, still makes the call to Ed. He activates the disappear protocol one last time. He and Walt spend their final days together in a basement bunker underneath a vacuum repair shop, waiting for new documents and escape routes. Ed smuggles Walt out as Mr. Lambert to a cabin in New Hampshire. And Saul becomes Gene Takovich, a Cinnabon manager in Omaha. The FBI couldn't find Walt for months. The most expensive manhunt in New Mexico history, and they had nothing, because Saul's network was that good, even when everything else had fallen apart. So here's what I keep coming back to every time I rewatch this show. Walter White was a genius at exactly one thing: chemistry. He could cook the purest meth on the planet, but he couldn't sell it, couldn't hide the money, couldn't deal with the law, and couldn't stop his own ego from blowing everything up. Gus saw it. He called Walt a careless man and almost refused to work with him. Mike saw it. He literally told Walt he was a ticking time bomb and compared his product to Betamax, technically perfect but commercially useless because the guy behind it was impossible to work with. Even Saul saw it from day one. You two suck at peddling meth. But Saul was the only one who decided to work with the chaos instead of running from it. And he did it 14 times. 14 separate moments where, without Saul Goodman, the Heisenberg Empire would have ended. Not might have ended, would have. 86 years in federal prison. And honestly, he earned the sentence because he earned the empire too.